Hello, ladies and gentlemen from around the world. Welcome to another exciting episode of the Global Talkative Series, a platform to hang out, connect, a platform to hang out, connect, and collaborate with one another. And we have been blessed on this show with amazing and wonderful guests from around the world who are coming on our show to discuss some vital information, giving us some vital information, instruction, and learning. And today's not an exception because we have an amazing guest in the house. And I'm going to be bringing our guest in on Instagram. And afterwards, I'll read the profile of our guest and then we'll get going with the conversation. Anyway, from now, our guest will be coming in on Instagram so that we can all, carry everybody along on all the platform. We are reaching you on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube, real time live from our Global Talkative Series studio here in Calgary, Alberta, Canada. I'll send an invitation to you, Dr. Yvonne. On Instagram, can you see any invitation?
Yeah. hmm
Okay, you can just click and connect.
That's good.
So I'm waiting to see you.
The request.
Oh, okay. So you're gonna be coming in just in few seconds from now. Okay, that is amazing. Ladies and gentlemen, today our guest is no other person but Dr. Yvonne Kangong, a medical doctor, a diplomat of American Board of Obesity Medicine. And today's topic is obesity plus COVID-19, a collision of epidemic and pandemic. Obesity and COVID-19, a collision of epidemic and pandemic. And before I engage our guests in today's discussion, like we did on this show, I'm going to read the profile of our guest to you, and then you can uh, go along with us. Dr. Yvonne Kangong is a board certified obesity medicine specialist with the American Board of Obesity Medicine. She is a clinical lecturer with the Department of Family Medicine Clerkship and Residency Program, University of Calgary since 2013. She received the Honorable Mention Faculty Award for her contributions and teachings in the University of Calgary Family Medicine Clerkship Program, class of 2019. She obtained an undergraduate medical degree from Spartan Health Sciences University, School of Medicine, St. Lucia, West Indies, and a residency in family medicine at the University of Calgary. She also holds a master's degree in public health from Lakehead University, Turner Bay, Ontario in 2008. She is currently practicing family and obesity medicine at the Saddletown Medical Clinic in Calgary, Alberta. Prior to residency, Dr. Kangon worked as a research coordinator at the Alberta Children's Hospital Endocrinology Department Portion Control Study, a study looking at using the portion control plate in children and adolescents to help prevent and treat obesity, and this sparked an interest in obesity medicine. Dr. Kangon has seen positive impact of weight management on our patients and their comorbid conditions such as diabetes, hypertension, osteoarthritis, just to name a few, and wants to extend this opportunity to others. She is a member of the Obesity Medicine Association, Obesity Canada, and the Canadian Clinicians for Therapeutic Nutrition. Patients who suffer from obesity often have tried many commercial weight loss programs with short-term results or failures. Personalized doctor supervised medical weight management programs are the right place for you to obtain long-term results. Let us work together to achieve your healthy lifestyle goals and regain energy and vitality. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome our guest, Dr. Yvonne Kangong. How are you, Dr. Yvonne?
I'm good, thank you. How are you, Lanway?
I'm very well. So, how you been doing today? I know you've been having a
Well,
busy day. You're having a busy day.
I'm doing good, thank you. Yeah.
Okay, so I just let's before going straight to our discussion today, tell our audience a journey into becoming an obesity medicine specialist.
Okay, as you rightly said that, Lanre, it all started in 2008 when I was working as the research coordinator at the Alberta Children's Hospital. So the portion control study. So that really sparked an interest in obesity medicine for me because I saw a lot of benefits with the kids. Some of them were pre-diabetic, like some of them had like high cholesterol levels and other things. And then when we got them into the program and they started eating healthier, we found that some of those numbers were going down. And so habits that you learn in childhood goes along with you a long way. And so after that, as time went on, I did my residency and I couldn't stand adding more medications to patients. And I said, we have to look at the root cause of it all, right? So it's not all about, we have to find out why do people become obese? Is it their environment? Is it the food they eat? Is it genetics? And so I started doing more research and I started taking some courses and attended some conferences in the US and took the exam and just carrying that knowledge along and sharing it with my patients. I've seen, like a better quality of life. And
Mm,
if I can help one patient prevent them from getting diabetes,
mm.
then I'm doing something right. Yeah.
That is amazing. Out of a need for to get a solution,
Yes.
do this to solve the problems of obesity in humanity. Thank you so
Yes.
much for doing this.
Thank you.
Now, before going to this question, I read some things from some journals which I want to read to our audience. Especially an article from Mayo Clinic Proceedings. It says that obesity has reached epidemic proportions in the United States and in much of the westernized world,
Mm-hmm.
contributing to considerably morbidity. Several of these obesity related morbidities are associated with greater risk for death with coronavirus disease in
Mm-hmm.
2019.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I also read that despite growing recognition of the problem, the obesity epidemic continues in the US and obesity rates are increasing around the world. Now, the latest estimates are that approximately 34% of adults and 15 to 20% of children and adolescents are in the US are obese.
Mm-hmm.
According to Canada, Public Health of Canada has reported that in 2017 alone, 64% of Canadians over the age of 18 are overweight or obese, and about 30% of children aged 5 to 17 are overweight or obese. Now, the question is, why so?
Well, Larry, as we all know, at some point in time when you and I were growing up, we could get up in the morning, run around, go places, and just come back in the evening and, we eat natural sources of food supplies. Now, most people are sedentary. With the evolution of cell phones and iPads and computers and TV, people spend a lot of time on their gadgets,
Yeah.
right? AKA couch potatoes,
Mm,
right? So in order for so think of energy, whatever you put in, something has to come out. But
yeah.
if you're putting in food, eating, and you're not being active, what happens? It's just gonna stay in,
Yeah.
right? So that's what is happening now in these days. And if you're watching a TV show, they're always advertising. What do they advertise most of the time? Chips,
Mm,
sodas, right?
yeah.
And another one I call the drool factor is like if you look at a baby, sometimes they have like think of it this way. If a little kid is wearing a Nike t-shirt, right?
Yeah.
A drool comes out of their mouth, touches the Nike t-shirt. What happens when they grow old? Won't they want to wear Nike?
Mm, mm,
Right?
yeah. Yeah.
So if they grow up watching TV and seeing Kraft dinner, don't get me wrong, it's not that it's 100% bad or
Yeah.
burger, right? they're gonna, when they're passing on the street or McDonald's, if they're passing on the street, what are they gonna say? Mommy, mommy, mommy. They're gonna recall and say, mommy, 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 can we get that?
Mm.
Right?
Yeah.
And also on the other part of school policies, right? If you go to some schools, you're gonna see vending machines that have sodas and all of that. So it has to start from the top, right? When they're sitting in the legislative assembly, they should be thinking about, okay, what policies can we make that can help the population, right? If there might be someone among them who says, oh, I own a vending machine company. Yes, let's put it in all the schools. Therefore, they put it in all the schools. If a kid comes out of the class and they see a vending machine, Coca-Cola, club soda, something, they're going to press on it, right?
Yes.
Another thing also in the school areas is, as time goes on, sometimes the amount of physical activity is decreasing to a point that sometimes when they get into the high school level, they barely have any physical activities.
That's right.
Right? So if you add all of that up, what do we get? Right? A generation of people who are suddenly inactive, but right, and therefore they're gonna become obese. And another thing also, there are some people too who get obese based on medications. So if they have a certain medical condition and they take some medications, let's say some people who have diabetes, they're on insulin, that can make them obese too. Some people who have like psychiatric conditions and they take certain medications that can lead to obesity. And another cause of obesity too is genetics, right? There's some genetic conditions, certain that can predispose people to obesity. So sometimes some people are obese, some people have obesity. It's not their fault. It's just because of their genetics. And in cases like that, sometimes we might have to give them certain medications to bring back that enzyme or that they are missing.
That is amazing. So
yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
So can we say categorically that obesity is hereditary?
Yes, there are some form of obesity that are hereditary, and those ones are the most difficult ones to treat. There are some kids that you see even before the age of 2, they're already obese. Those, most of the time, it's most commonly hereditary obesity, but sometimes it's also from the amount of milk that they're eating. So, and those kids who you see at a younger age with hereditary obesity, they would have different features. Like they'll have certain features that you can pinpoint and say, this child doesn't look normal, right? Yeah.
That is amazing. So, with a lot of folks going through those challenges, I'm hoping that I want to believe that there is hope for them, even though it is hereditary. There is some form of treatment that is available for them. So let's just go a bit, towards the topic of our today's discussion. Why people with obesity are dying more from COVID-19 as seen in Italy compared to China?
Okay, so think of obesity as a chronic disease, right? Whereby fat mass accumulates.
Yeah.
And so think of fat mass accumulating in different organs of the body. What happens to them? They can't function properly. And so in the case of COVID-19, for example, so before I'll just say from head to toe, for example. So fat mass accumulates in the brain. It might affect you, causing memory issues. It gets to the heart. It might cause cardiac issues. Then now the lungs, pneumonias and all of that. Comes down to the guts and the bowels. You can get things like colon cancer, endometrial cancer. Coming down to the joints, you can get like arthritis and other things. So now focusing on COVID-19, that has to do with the lungs. And so in the lungs, so when you breathe, like breathing in, you inhale and you exhale. So people who have obesity, especially abdominal obesity, for example, think of the diaphragm is just like a thin muscle that separates the lungs from the abdominal cavity. So when they take a deep breath, right, with the obesity, abdominal obesity, it pushes everything up. So the lungs can't really function properly compared to someone who doesn't have obesity. And therefore, what happens? When they get COVID-19, they can't really clear their secretions. And then they have a poorer outcomes because it can end up with pneumonia and all the other complications from it. Yeah.
That is amazing. So that leads me to the next question. I saw on TV, patients with COVID-19 are being placed on their stomach. Why this style of treatment?
Yeah, because what happens is when you're upright, there are certain areas of the lungs that doesn't get perfused like totally, but you are still breathing normally. So with COVID-19, this stemmed from, there was a doctor one day who was called to come into the intensive care unit in the US in the middle of COVID-19. And they said the patient was doing really poorly. So this doctor said, why don't you turn this patient on their stomach? So they turned the patient on the stomach and suddenly all the oxygen levels became better. So
Mm.
now the explanation to that is in that position, there are certain areas that are more profuse where air gets in and out of the lungs, and that helps um, better outcome of COVID-19.
So can we say that the food we eat causes obesity? Some of
Oh,
the
of
food we
course.
eat,
Oh, yes.
especially in the days of this genetically modified foods.
Yes, of course they do. So if you've ever, let's say, if you had a time whereby you went on vacation and you just indulge, right?
Mm.
What happens when you come back? Somehow you're going to gain weight. So
Mm.
it's always eating the right kind of food and the right amount of food. If you spend every day eating chips and fries and, certain things, like you're going to gain weight. If
Mm.
you're doing that and at least you're doing a little bit of exercise, you might not gain as much weight as somebody who's just eating and eating and eating.
Mm.
And so, there's been some evidence like a diet like a Mediterranean diet, for example, which is,
Yeah.
a little bit of fish, a little bit of meat, like limit the amount of meat, plant based, also some nuts and all that. So
Mm.
there's been a lot of evidence that helps decrease cardiovascular diseases and prevent heart attacks and all that stuff. So what you eat makes a big difference for sure.
Now, if what we eat causes such challenges, why do we
Mhm.
have obesity in children? Because not all children eat so much food.
Mhm.
You want to wonder, like a boy or
Mhm.
girl or 5 year old, 6 year
Mhm.
old, even
Mhm.
under,
Mhm.
bigger than the normal size.
Mhm.
Why do we have such conditions in children?
Yeah, so as I mentioned earlier on, sometimes it's the genetics, that's one of it. Some other times it's the environment in which they grow, right? And sometimes also, since I did mention it's also hereditary. So if you have a parent who is obese, your chances of obesity also increases.
Mm.
And if you live in an environment whereby if you like depending on what you grow up eating, right? That will also make you obese. So those are some of the
Mm.
things. And they are no longer physically active as before, right? A 1-year-old child can operate their iPad better than me. I've
Yeah.
seen kids, right? So parents are busy, everyone is busy. Sometimes you want a little quiet time. What happens? The kid gets sent in a little
Mm.
corner and maybe they might be playing with their iPad. As opposed to when you and I were growing up, what do? We're gonna run outside,
Yeah.
right? And
Mm.
play.
Mm.
So, and just based on that, there was this hospital in the US. It's called the Brenner's Children's Hospital in Wakefield, somewhere in North Carolina. They came up with this amazing, I call it amazing tips that can help for childhood obesity. They call it
Mm.
the 5-4-3-2-1 rule, which they emphasize 5 servings of fruits and vegetables per day for the
Wow.
kids. And then they also say families should eat together 4 times a week. So
Mm.
think of it this way: if someone has an unhealthy habit and you're sneaking chips here and there, or maybe you want to eat a little bit more, if you're sitting and eating as a family, what happens? Eyes are on you,
Yeah.
right? So you're gonna kind of limit that because if everybody else is trying to eat healthy, you're gonna mirror that also.
Yeah.
So
Mm.
that's for so three, 3, 7, 3. So three would be for 3 healthy meals a day, and then
Mm.
two is for less than 2 hours of screen time,
Mm.
right?
Mm.
And then one is for at least 1 hour of physical activity a day, and zero is for zero sugary drinks. And
Wow.
believe you, if you look around, if you go around the houses and do like a survey, you'd see that there's a lot of carbonated, like sugary drinks that are being consumed. Even the so-called pure orange juice. If you look at it, you
Wow.
might see like 26 gram of sugar or 59 gram of sugar.
Wow.
So yeah, so those are just some of the things that you know
Mm.
we
Mm.
really have to pay attention to. You
That is
know,
that is
yeah.
amazing. Still on the
Mm-hmm.
Global Talkative series with our guest, Dr. Yvonne Kangong. And the topic of our discussion today is obesity and COVID-19, a collision of epidemic and pandemic. And these are major, major issues that we need to deal with, especially as the world is going through so many challenges now. So the next question is, what are the early symptoms of or sign of obesity, and what can we do to avoid it?
Okay, Larry. So the early symptom and sign of obesity. So sometimes there might be somebody who might look okay, right? But biochemically, which means things like their cholesterol level, their blood sugars level would not be okay. So those ones you can only see based on the blood work.
Hmm.
But so obesity is classified based on BMI, which is the body mass index.
Index.
So body mass index greater than 30 is obesity, and then the more you go up, there's like different classes to like more than 40, which is morbidly obese.
Hmm.
And in children, it's usually on percentile based on their weight and height. So for children, it's more than 95th percentile.
Hmm.
So when all that happens, just think of fat, for example, collecting in different parts of the body, right? What happens? As I did mention earlier on, you might have the high blood pressure. It can press on the joints. It might lead to joint aches and pains, and then you see people getting arthritis, right? Just more pain. Some people might get gout. Some people might get diabetes. Some people might get heart problems, whereby the fat too also might collect in the arteries, which can also lead to heart attack. It can also lead to strokes,
Hmm. Hmm.
right? Some people can have increased abdominal obesity, which is like in their abdominal region, right?
Yeah.
And that one is a very dangerous one because it predisposes you to what we call metabolic syndrome, which is a change of different things like high blood pressure, high triglycerides, which are just cholesterols, and different fatty acids, which can make you to like have heart attacks and strokes and all that,
Hmm.
right?
That's
So if you put all of that together, you can see that it's we really have to fight obesity globally.
it's a major
It's a
issue.
it's a major issue. It's a major issue.
Now, if not properly treated, is obesity a death sentence in disguise?
Oh yes. Oh yes. So one other one that I didn't talk about was obstructive sleep apnea. So
Hmm.
it's a condition whereby people have periods at night where they stop breathing, and one cause
Wow.
of it is obesity, right? So, and the reason is, so if you think of the like in the mouth, sometimes with obesity, the neck circumference increases, so that presses on certain like the palates and all that. So when they are breathing at night, they might stop breathing. And if you stop breathing, what happens? Decreased blood supply, oxygen to the brain. So they wake up in the morning, they are tired, they are irritable, they have poor concentration. Sometimes that can even lead to motor vehicle accidents. So that's
Hmm.
one big one,
Hmm.
right? And so think of it. Someone might just wake up one day and have an accident. Nobody knows why. And that might just be one cause of it, which is
Hmm.
preventable, right?
Hmm.
If let's say he had addressed that or he or she had addressed that and started the proper treatment, then we could prevent that, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
It can also lead to cancers like colon cancer, prostate cancer, and something like endometrial cancer. It's like one of the most common cause of cancers in like women, like also obesity, right?
Hmm.
Endometrial cancer. So
Hmm.
yeah, so just so it's really a chronic disease.
Now, when you mentioned about sleep deficiency,
Hmm.
I noticed that a lot of folks who have excessive weight or
Hmm.
obesity, challenges, they have this challenge with snoring. In fact,
Exactly.
I actually experienced one in my family back then in Nigeria. Like
Hmm.
this uncle of mine, anytime he's sleeping, they always have a kind of a bottle of water beside. His wife always get water beside because he's sleeping, and at some point the snoring gets so problematic that he has to almost losing consciousness. They have to wake him up and then get him
Yes.
water. Why? Can you explain the correlation between snoring and obesity?
Yeah, so that's what I did mention. That's what is called obstructive sleep apnea.
Okay.
So it's because of the large neck circumference, right? And because of that, so you normally there's supposed to be a space between the like when you lie down to sleep, you're supposed to have a space where you can breathe in and out. So that with obesity, the large neck circumference that it gets obstructed, and because
Mm.
of that, they stop breathing, right,
Wow.
at night. Then they snore because they're kind of trying to think of everything is kind of squishing. I'm trying to make it as easy as
Yes.
not non-technical as possible. And yeah, so just because of that, like it's terrible. Like it's really terrible. And some people feel like it's normal. They feel like, oh, most almost everybody snores, right? And it's okay
Mm.
until and that to the sleep apnea too sometimes is a cause of things like high blood pressure also. So it's like a vicious cycle.
Mm.
Yeah.
There are cases in which I've seen some folks that are not on the bigger side, but they snore as well. Not because they are tired or because of fatigue.
Mm-hmm.
What is the correlation between you're not big and all obese and you're snoring? So
Mm-hmm.
what is the correlation between that?
Yeah, so a certain amount of snoring is okay, right? It's just the way their anatomy is. It doesn't really
Okay.
mean they have obstructive sleep apnea. So there's a way to diagnose this whereby you have like it's an overnight sleep study. It's called polysomnography. The setting companies set you up with like a mask, and so like whereby they record the number of times you stop breathing at night and the number of snoring, and then they come up with a diagnosis. And once the
Mm.
diagnosis is found, then they can help you with there's a machine we call CPAP that helps also reduce some of those complications from it. Yeah.
That is amazing. If you're watching us, this is still the Global Talkative Series with Dr. Yvonne Kangong, and our topic of discussion today is obesity and COVID-19, a collision of epidemic and pandemic. And if you have any question for our guest today, you can just type in your question either on Instagram, Facebook, or YouTube, and we'll do our best to answer the question. And for those who are joining us from around the world, we appreciate you so much. Thank you for taking time to join this conversation. Now, our next question is what practical steps will you recommend for individuals with obesity challenges?
Okay, Lanre. So you have to think about energy intake and energy expenditure.
Mm.
So you can, in order for one has to be up, the other one has to be down. So if you're taking a little bit more energy intake, you also have to make sure that's almost the same way. Sorry, if you're getting more calories in, you have to be able to burn them also, right?
Mm.
By doing more exercises. So practical steps that you can do is so I always say kind of sit down and take a get a food diary. That's the first step. Just kind of write down what you eat every day. I did
Mm.
that for myself because at some point I thought I was eating so well. But then I said, oh, let me try, right? Let me try and see how much I'm eating. Sometimes you might be having a busy day and somebody say, yeah, get a cookie, you eat, get an apple, get this. It adds up at the end of the day. Just do that
Mm.
for yourself for 1 week. It will tell you, then you can sit down and try to calculate like, wow, then you'll be like, really, I'm taking this much? And then now, if you try on the other side to say, okay, how long, okay, I'm eating this much. How have I been exercising? You put that together and you see that really we are a sedentary population and we have to put an end to that.
Mm.
So start by recording that and then go from there. Then we can always review that with your family doctor. They can always reach out to me and then yeah, we can go from there. And another thing that's very important is when they going out for grocery shopping, food labeling is very important
Food
because
labeling. Can you
sometimes
explain that?
yes, yeah. So when you go to let's say you pick up a can of juice, right? They're gonna have all the nutritive values in it. You might just look at it and say, "Oh, pure orange juice," but then you don't like it's loaded with sugar. There's always those, and then there's always those additives there that are always written like in fine print. May also include
Yeah.
right. So there's
Yeah.
you have to try and look at the amount what you're putting in because
Mm.
yeah because it's really very important. Yeah.
So, I want to give you like an experience I had, and which I want to relate to between the Asian continent and African continent. We have more
Mm-hmm.
people with obesity in the US, Canada, and part of the Western and European countries, whereas not so much common in Africa and Asia. I've been privileged to be in both continents at some point, and there's something I discovered in China. When you go out for dinner or a meal, they eat more of raw food, spicy food with some wasabi paste that is very spicy. In Africa, we eat more of spicy habanero, which of course I love spicy food. And will you say that spicy food has some kind of effect that help us to reduce, the possibility of gaining excess weight or tending towards being obese? Because in China, you hardly see so much. It's only in Japan that you have these sumo fighters that are big because of the kind of exercise they do and the kind of, I don't know how they do, but that particular set of, community, they are always big because of the kind of sports activities they engage in. But other part of Asia, China, all of those places, they are not always on that bigger side, and also part of Africa.
Mm-hmm.
Can we say that spicy food has an advantage in preventing us from becoming obese?
Larry, I haven't really seen a study about that. I
Okay.
think to really conclude on that, they will really have to have like lots of studies to come up with that. But one thing that I know is in those developing countries, there's a lot of we eat from the soil, right? We don't
Yeah.
have over processed foods. Whereas
Mm.
in North America, most of the food that they eat is processed. How many people have a farm in their backyard? So
Yeah.
it's just the GMO, which is the genetically modified items that we're having in this part of the world that predisposes us to obesity and the sedentary lifestyle also, right? I'm sure also in places like China and all these other places, they either go around with their bikes or they walk a lot, same in Africa, right?
Mm.
But in the US, most people have a car or they take a bus, right? And
Yes.
food,
Yes.
also food is very affordable, right?
Yeah.
If you compare the food, Burger King in the US, for example, and in Canada is different. The US is supersized, right?
Mm.
So you might think you are eating one burger, but you're eating 4 or 5 in the US. So I think it's more just our environment, right? And the food
Yeah.
choices and the lack of activity.
Now, this day and age, I still want to talk more about the genetically modified food. We have this Beyond Meat burger, all this kind of processed kind of meat, alternative beef or chicken or
Mhm.
whatever. Are they good for our consumption, or can we say that what is there any advantage in taking any of this genetically modified food? What advantage do they have? Is it more on the advantage part or disadvantage part to our human health?
Yeah, yeah. To me, anything that's genetically modified is disadvantageous, right?
Mm.
If you can buy your own meat and cook it, you know what you're putting inside it. When you buy something already processed and cooked, right, from the stores, they have to put preservatives in there. And we don't know what
Yeah.
preservatives do to our systems. Most of the time, they have negative impact. So, yeah, I think that's the main thing. I would rather outsource my own food than buy genetically modified items. That with the busy lifestyle, some of those things come in handy, right?
Yeah.
So people buy it also for convenience because you come back, you're tired, and you can just take it and put it in the oven and done. 30 minutes, you can move on to the next
Yes.
item that you have to do. So it's also convenience,
Mm.
right?
Mm.
Yeah.
Wow. Now, what kind of exercise will you prescribe for someone with obesity?
Okay, so exercise, so it depends. So the Obesity Medical Association and the American Association of Exercise Physiologists, they do mention 150 to 250 minutes of physical activities a week. Think of
Mm.
it like 30 minutes 5 times a week. So it's you can't really say prescribe. It's not one size fits all because there are some people who might have severe arthritis who can't get into vigorous activities,
Yes.
right? If you can just start by slowly walking, start 10 minutes a day, and then slowly increasing it. If you can go higher than that, that's fine. So once you've lost weight, then you can even go 200, 300 minutes a week. So the more, the better, right? And So also cardio exercises is good. And then this new we are really big on the high intensity training, whereby you might do like lunges, jumping jacks, and then you rest in between. There's a lot of evidence that it helps also with weight loss. The new one that I found very exciting to me is jumping ropes, skipping ropes, just like we
Okay.
used to do when we were growing up, where you just
Yeah.
have your rope and right. It's amazing because like you work almost all the muscles in your body. So for those who can do that, it's amazing, you know.
Mm.
And there's also the gym. Unfortunately, there's COVID right now where we have to be
Yeah.
careful also with physical distancing. But if you can get into that, right? And some places used to have like walking programs where you go and just walk around. And yeah, unfortunately now with COVID, a lot of those things they've
Mm.
been put on hold. But
Yeah.
even if you are home, you can always put a video and dance. It's one form of exercise, you know. And
Mm.
one that I found interesting in the middle of COVID too is like you take a piece of, let's say you're sweeping or you're mopping, you have your vacuum, you dance with it,
Yeah.
right?
At least one step
Just
here
make,
and there, you're doing something.
yes, yeah, you just make everything fun and yeah. Mhm.
What can we say about fasting?
Oh yeah, that's the new big thing. So intermittent fasting. Yeah,
Yeah.
there's a lot of evidence coming up now that it really helps with weight loss. So there are different types. So it all depends on your body type and what works for you. And also it should be done in consultation with a physician because if let's say somebody has diabetes, for example, and they get into extended period of time fasting, they might get low blood sugar and actually get into shock or coma, right?
Mm.
But
Mm.
the ones that I've been studying a lot is whereby maybe you might fast for like 16 hours or 14 to 16 hours, and then you like after that period you eat, right? Let's say, for example, you say, okay, I'm going to stop eating at 6 p.m. tonight, right? You have your dinner, and then
Yeah.
the next morning, so next morning, 6 a.m., that's already 12 hours. You have your lunch at about breakfast at about 9:10. That's already 12, 13 hours. Because
Yeah.
what happens with that is the reason behind it is initially like we get our energy source from carbohydrates. So with fasting, it gets burnt, carbohydrate gets used, and now the body has to look for more energy source. And where do they get that from? The fat. So now it starts burning that fat from the body, right?
Mm.
And that's
Mm.
why you hear some people talk also about the keto diet because they feel that, like the keto diet also would make you get into that state faster. Then you
Mm.
burn. So instead of using now, you use fat in your system to burn, and that also leads to a lot of weight loss. Yeah.
So the keto diet, has it been clinically proven that it really helps to reduce challenges surrounding obesity?
Yeah, so there've been lots of studies and there's still more going on. Because I remember when it first came out, a lot of those like, okay, this is really cool, but some people are thinking, okay, well, what are we gonna see in 5 to 6 to 7 years? Are they gonna be people with lots of like high cholesterol and all of that? But so far, a lot of data that's coming up, it really helps with weight loss. For me, what I would recommend usually is everything in moderation because if you stick to one diet it becomes very challenging, right? And that's where medical doctors as obesity specialists they really help you because we try to tailor something that is sustainable, not a quick
Mm.
fix. Not we call those fat diets whereby somebody would say, okay, I'm just gonna eat all vegetables for 1 year and fruit. I'm gonna stop everything because at some point you're gonna cheat, and when you cheat, then you feel like then you gain weight, and then when you gain weight then you feel like you're falling down the wagon, right?
Yeah.
And then you get discouraged. But then if you have something that's
Mm.
sustainable, which is the best, right? You want to have something that you can stick to it, and even when you waver, then you know, okay, well, I'm going to have a little cheat day here and there, but I know I'm going to catch up the next day, right? It's just
Yeah.
something that because some people sometimes they say, okay, I'm gonna get on this strict diet. I'm not gonna eat anything ethnic because those things they're gonna cost me weight gain, right?
Mm.
And what
Mm.
happens then at some point if you go somewhere and somebody has cooked that, you're gonna go and what are you gonna do? You're gonna indulge,
Yeah. Mm.
and then you go back crying. So
Wow. That is amazing. Still on the global talkative series with our guest today, Dr. Yvonne Kangong, and our topic of discussion today is obesity and COVID-19, a collision of epidemic and pandemic. And we've been talking so much extensively about the challenges of obesity in our community, which of course we need to be aware of. It's a major challenges that people are going through. I can't just imagine having those excess body weight and then try to move, to walk, to run. It's a lot of challenge. And lately, we've seen a lot of publication or publicity in terms of pills. That if you take this pill, it's going to help you to reduce your fat and to burn it. Now, is that not wrongfully? Is that not a wrong way of approaching this challenge? Because you're encouraging someone, they're just taking pills, and you think automatically with the pills it's going to reduce the excess body fat or weight while it's still feeding on the junks. What can you say about that?
Mm-hmm.
Taking pills to prevent
Mm-hmm.
obesity.
Yeah. So, Lanre, so with obesity treatment, it's a holistic approach, right? So you have to think first, what is making, let's say somebody has obesity, right? Is it as a result of stresses that they have that's making them overeat? Is it genetics? And if it's genetic, then pills is okay, right? And even if it's not genetic, if they've gained that weight, so diet now we call it medical nutrition therapy. So they've tried healthy eating, that didn't work. We also tried exercise, that doesn't work. There are medications that have been researched that are approved in Canada and the US that can help with weight loss. So those medications, like, yes, everything else has its own side effects, but if it's one of those medications that are approved that will be prescribed by a physician for weight loss, it's okay, right? Because the goal of it all is if they can take it and if that can help with weight loss, then why not? Because when all that else fails, then there's also bariatric surgery, which is the last part, whereby they kind of do certain restrictive surgeries, whereby they take sometimes they might take like a sleeve gastrectomy, where they take certain part of their stomach. Therefore, they don't eat, they can't retain too much food. And that will also reduce some of the nutrient, the enzymes and all that in that part of their body. And therefore, that will make them lose weight. So it's a holistic approach whereby you think about psychological factors. That's why they might need counseling also to find out why is this person eating excessively more than right. Then, as I said, if it's genetics, then there's also the exercise. And then we think of the medications. In Canada, we have about 3 medications. There's one that's called Olista, there's liraglutide, there's another one called Contrave. Those are the 3 main ones approved in Canada. And if you try all of that and all else fails, then bariatric surgery for sure. But the other diet pills out there, if it's not really been researched, I don't recommend it because no one knows what they put in them. Yeah.
What about the case of people who go for gastric bypass?
That's still okay. Because think of it this way, Larry. If you're going to do something that would help, right, prevent you from having diabetes, right, hypertension, better quality of life, why not? Right? Why not? And that's always the last step when we've tried everything else. Because there have been some studies that people, some people have diabetes, and as soon as they have the surgery, like they lose so much weight that they might even come off their medications right away. So, yeah.
Now, on the average, if you're engaging a client, how long does it take from the beginning of the consultation to placing them on a practical steps, like on the average? Like, how long?
So it's not one size fits all. We are all different. We are made genetically different. We all have our own different life stresses, right? You can start with someone right now and they're going on the right path. They're exercising well, they're eating well, and suddenly what happens? Maybe they lose the job. They lose a close family member. What happens? Sometimes people will turn to food for comfort, right? All the work that they've been putting at that point, you're starting from zero. So you
Mm.
have to support them all along the way. I don't believe in, you know what? By 2 months, you should be done. You're done. By 2, 3 months, sometimes you have these programs that say, oh, within 3 weeks, you should lose this amount of weight. Within 6 weeks, you should lose this amount of weight, right?
Mm.
No, it's not, because the faster you lose, you're gonna gain back also, right? Because you
Wow.
can't, whatever you did to lose the weight that fast within a week or two,
Mm.
it's not sustainable.
Mm.
So medical weight management with an obesity specialist, the goal is sustainability, right? We take
Yes.
you on a journey, and what the outcome is better health for you. We don't want a quick fix whereby, okay, now you've lost 20 pounds, there you go. We want to support you till you
Mm.
achieve your goals. Yeah.
What classes of food will you recommend? We have protein, carbohydrate, fat, all of that, because fats and oil is also part of classes of food.
Mm-hmm.
So what, like, on the average, for those who are unable to, because we have audiences from across the world who are
Mm-hmm.
watching, who might not have access to the kind of medical facility we have in the Western world. Probably they're
Mm-hmm.
watching from, or they're going to be watching this episode later,
Mm-hmm.
remote places of,
Mm-hmm.
Africa or Asia or Europe. What kind of food diets will you recommend?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so one thing that for me I noticed, for example, for us growing up in Africa, we eat a lot of carbohydrates. Think of an example is the Kenyan, they might call it ugali, you guys call it swallow, Cameroonian, we call it
Yeah.
fufu. If you see someone with a plate, fufu is like half of it or three quarter, and then there's this little vegetable on the side. Why can't
Yeah.
we change it? Why can't we turn it around? Let the
Mm.
biggest portion be the vegetable and the fufu, right?
Mm.
And then if we
Mm.
can get healthier choices of the fufu also, right?
Mm.
So if it's right in that, so just those are just the little steps, because you can't really go tell someone who doesn't really have to say, you
Yeah.
know what, this is it. We can only question them and say, okay, this is what you normally eat. Why can't we fix it this way? Okay, let's try. Let's put a little bit more vegetable, a little meat, and then
Mm.
then your little carbohydrates, right? If we look at the Canada Food Guide, they recommend a higher amount of carbohydrate, then protein, then fats, then some fibers. But
Mm.
when you're trying to lose some weight, so we have to work around those numbers like the carbohydrates and all of that, because it's really really hard if you stick to that to lose weight,
Mm.
right?
Mm.
And then also emphasizing, like for people back home or in different parts of the world, there are certain things that they might not know, like the sweet drinks they call it in those places. There's a lot of sugar in them.
Mm.
Make sure they have water in their diet. Beer, alcohol, there's a lot of calories in that, right?
Mm. Mm.
So those are just some of the things. And fried fish, fried this, try to bake it,
Or
right?
grill? What about grilling?
Or grill it, exactly, or grill it, right? So those are
Mm.
just the little steps that you can take. And yeah.
So if our audience is watching you now and they want to get in touch with you, I have a phone number on the screen for
Mhm.
those who are watching on YouTube and Facebook, and the
Mhm.
email. So I'm assuming they can reach out to you through this uh numbers and email address, right?
Yeah, certainly. Or through at Dr. Kangong, also through Instagram. Yeah.
Now, apart from working, in an hospital, do you do some form of counseling, talking through to patients on placing them on a particular regiment of diet? Do you have that kind of services as well?
Yeah, so I do a little bit of that also, but I work like hand in hand with like a dietitian who can also help with that.
Okay.
Yeah. Hmm.
Hmm. That is amazing. Still on
Hmm.
the Global Talkative series with our guest, Dr. Yvonne Kangong, and our topic of discussion today is obesity and COVID-19, a collision of epidemic and pandemic. And we've seen a lot of issues happening from around the world. People, dying because of lack or poor nutrition, Now, in closing this, what kind of word of advice do you have for our audience in terms of their diets, their lifestyle, what they do to maintain a very balanced, lifestyle?
Well, so one thing I would have to say is take care of you, right? Because there's only one you.
Yeah.
Because I would speak from personal experience. As when before I got into this, I used to feel tired all the time because I wasn't eating properly. I wasn't taking better care of myself. I wasn't drinking enough water, right?
Mm.
So if you can like take care of yourself, create time just for you, whereby you just reflect on your life and you know try to eat healthy. Sometimes it might be hard financially to really eat. Eating healthy sometimes it's financially difficult, but
Mm.
make do with what you have. And if then get into like an exercise regime. I know this is really hard time with COVID-19 where people can't really go out, right? Some people had to find themselves in self isolation, which all of this can lead to like depression, financial struggles, and limited food access, and then this worsening sense of isolation also can also make people start eating emotion, like lead to emotional eating. It's almost like a
Yeah.
spiral cycle, right? Things were going good, I had patients who things were going good and suddenly they got, they lost their job, right? Or they had to self isolate either because they were COVID-19 positive or something like that. And all that just brought things all around, whereby you're home all through the day, the fridge is right there. You're dancing between your chair to the
Yeah.
fridge.
Mm.
You turn on the TV, they tell you people are dying here, and it just, right, it just makes your mood go down, right?
Mm.
And so just kind of, it's hard, but create that time for yourself. And I can't really end this talk without talking about the stigma and the bias about with
Yeah.
people with obesity.
Yeah. Please.
Unfortunately, there are some people who may, there are some people with obesity that it's genetics. There
Yeah.
are others for whatever reason that it happens, right? And they are doing their best to
Mm.
lose weight. But unfortunately, there's so much stigma around that people call them names. People call them, especially in kids, to a point that they get teased, they get bullied. And to
Yeah.
me, that's a no-no. Because when you
Mm.
start teasing somebody, you start bullying them, you're reducing, you're bringing down their self-esteem, and all that can lead to depression,
Yeah.
right? And so we as a community, as a society, we have to fight to bring an end to that stigma and that bias.
Mm.
And I was also reading a literature, one study also that even in the healthcare industry, there are certain people with obesity that don't get the same care that others without obesity get. And that's a no-no, you
Mm.
know, because if if someone is suffering because someone with obesity is suffering, it affects all of us.
Yeah.
Somehow it should affect all of us because we have to have a healthy community together. So I think we
Yes.
should all fight, put our hands together, fight to put an end to obesity. And all this also starts at the top with legislation, right?
Mm.
Whereby
So
when they sit in the assembly, they can say, okay, what can we do as a community to help? Okay, let's create more packs. Let's,
mm.
if we're donating food at the food bank, what kind of food can we donate? Okay, let's try putting more money so that these people can get a little more healthy food. So it's
Yeah.
together, we have to work together to put an
Mm.
end to this. Yeah.
Thank you so much. We I absolutely agree with you. Standing against any form of stigma. Because for example,
Yeah.
individuals with obesity that's part of genetic hereditary challenge, they can't help it, and we can do better. By encouraging them, by supporting them. I have this saying that I usually say on this show that you can either be your brother's keeper or your brother's killer.
Yeah.
It's up to you.
I choose
What do
to
you
be
want to
my
do?
yeah. Yeah. I choose to be my brother's keeper. Very important.
And yes, how do we keep our brothers? By encouraging them, even though they're going through those challenges of obesity. It's enough
Mhm.
problem on its own. We
Yeah.
can help them, encourage them, even if you have to go work out with them or through exercise with them, or help them encourage the kind of food or the diet that they should take in a way that communicates love and care. I think we'll
Mhm.
win more than losing more.
No, no, I agree with you. You know, sometimes you might hear people talking and you hear, oh, that fat woman, that fat man, right? Those are like
Mm,
stigmatizing, right?
yes.
That person has a name. Call their name. If it's
Mm,
John, say John. You know, say John. Don't
mm,
describe them by that chubby person. No, that's a no-no. Because
mm,
put yourself in your shoes. What if that was you and you got called names? How would you feel? You
mm.
know, so let's be empathetic and let's you know, yeah,
Let's help them through the process until they get to a
yes,
better place,
exactly,
spirit, soul, and body. Thank you very much for your
exactly.
time today on this show. And for those who join us, Simi and Kara, thank you for joining. Fariki, thank you for joining. Omo Magnificent, thank you for joining. Dario Kumala from Nigeria, thank you for joining. Ria Montana, thank you for joining. Charles Damilare, thank you for joining. And all those who joined this conversation, thank you so much. And Dr. Yvonne, thank you for taking time to be on today's Global Talkative Series.
You're
Until we
welcome,
come
Larry.
again, yeah, with exciting and wonderful episode on the Global 12 series. It's bye for now. Make sure in all you're doing, you are your brother's keeper and not your brother's killer.
Yes,
Bye for
I
now.
agree with you. Thank
Thank
you.
you very much.
Thank you all for joining us. Stay
Thank you.
healthy and remember to smile. Thank
Yeah.
you.